Good morning, everyone. This is Archbishop Richard Gagnon, and this is our Friday report for October 28th. I'm speaking to you from the Catholic Center in downtown Winnipeg on Pembina, and thank you very much for joining us. So today is October 28th, as I said, and what feast day is this? Well, it's the feast day of Saints Jude and Saint Simon. Now, these two saints are always together, and Saint Jude is the saint of desperate and difficult cases. Many people know about this, and there are shrines throughout the world dedicated to Saint Jude. And certainly Saint Jude, his name is placed on certain facilities in the world, such as Saint Jude's Children's Hospital and so on, and very well known, and a saint that is often prayed to and asked for intercession in difficult cases that people are struggling with. And poor Saint Simon, we know very little about. Both men were martyrs for the faith. Simon was martyred in Libya, and Saint Jude was martyred in present-day Syria or Iraq. They were two apostles of the Blessed Lord. So Saint Simon and Jude, pray for us. So some good news in the Archdiocese, kind of unusual news in terms of my experience. I was recently asked by Bishop Scott McKeag, who is the military bishop in Canada. The military in Canada, the Roman Catholics in the military, come under what is called the military ordinariate, and Bishop Scott McKeag is the bishop overseeing that. It's a separate diocese completely, and Bishop Scott asked me to go to Shilo, CFB Shilo, 2 hours from Winnipeg, just outside of Brandon, to perform, to celebrate the Rite of Candidacy with a young man who is on the formation road towards the Holy Priesthood. The young man's name is Rylan Montgomery. He is a father of a family, 2 children. He was an Anglican priest, and now he is on the formation road towards the Catholic priesthood. And so Bishop Scott could not be there, so I gladly said I would go to CFB Shilo, to the chapel, Our Lady of Shilo. Chapel is called, a beautiful Roman Catholic chapel at the military base, and perform the Rite of Candidacy. It was a beautiful ceremony. There were many people there from the base, including the base commander. There were people from off the base too who came to be part of that. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And afterwards, both Scott and his wife and his 2 children, we went in a van. He gave me a tour of the whole military base there, and the various parts of the base, the various facilities, and so on. Now, reflecting on this, I've often spoken about the ministry of presence. The ministry of presence is being present to people wherever they are. Sometimes, when someone's in a hospital, you don't have words to say too much, but you're present, you're with them, and they know that. And the ministry of presence is very, very important. And Jesus performed a ministry of presence throughout his life. So, military chaplains. Now, Ryland right now is a lay chaplain, but he will soon, please God, be an ordained priest chaplain for the military. So chaplains in the military, their role is to live the life of the enlisted men, to live the life of soldiers, to be with the soldiers completely in what they do, the same training, the same way of life. When they are posted overseas to peacekeeping missions or to war zones, they're right there with the soldiers. And what is their role? Their role is a ministry of presence, to be present to the men and women in the military under difficult situations. They know that there's a man of God there among them, a man who can hear confessions, a man who can celebrate the sacraments, a man who can talk about things that are bothering them. Could be fears, could be uncertainties, whatever. So the military chaplain, their role is to encourage and to lift up people in their daily lives in a very difficult task of protecting us in our country. So I would just like to say it was a great pleasure and privilege to be part of that ceremony and sharing in the life of Ryland and his family, celebrating the Rite of Candidacy. So I just want to share that with you. we don't hear much about the military chaplaincy, but it's an important part of the church for sure. Okay, I would like to just try something a little different now. I've talked about the martyrs of Simon and Jude, apostles of the Blessed Lord, who died in the first century, witness to their faith, and I've mentioned something about the military. I'd like now to turn to a closer examination of the life of Blessed Vasyl Velychkovsky. I mentioned him last week. He is a martyr of the church, a martyr for the underground church during the time of the Soviet Union. And I have invited today to be with us a very special person, Father John Sianchuk, who is a director of the Blessed Vasyl Shrine in the city of Winnipeg. And Father John is a Redemptorist priest, and I recorded my interview with him a little earlier, and I'd like you to see that now. Thank you. Well, Father John, welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time to be on this little Friday report and to speak about this very important topic. For those that are watching the Friday report in the Archdiocese, I just want to introduce you to Father John Sianchuk, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. Now, Father is a Redemptorist priest and is part of the Redemptorists of Yorkton region in the province of Canada. The Yorkton Redemptorists are an Eastern Church branch of the worldwide congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer. I think a lot of Latins are familiar with the Redemptorists, but there's also a branch in the Eastern world as well. Father John's community serves the Ukrainian Catholic Church in Saskatchewan and in Manitoba. And over the years, Father John has served in various ministries as a teacher, director of the House of Studies for Ukrainian Catholics, formation director, pastor, missionary, and assistant at their inner city ministry, the Welcome Home, a ministry of St. Alphonsus here in Winnipeg. Father John was the provincial for the Yorkton Redemptorists during the time that Bishop Vasyl Velychkovsky was declared a blessed martyr. And that's our subject today. 20 years ago, Father John led the process of the enshrinement of Blessed Vasyl and established the Blessed Vasyl Velychkovsky National Martyr Shrine located in Winnipeg at St. Joseph's Ukrainian Catholic Church, which is at 250 Jefferson Avenue here in Winnipeg. And today, Father John continues his involvement as a director of the shrine, which is really a beautiful ministry, I'm sure. So, Father, once again, thank you for being with us. And I just want to, just for the people here listening and, to share with us a little bit about Blessed Vasyl. We're very blessed to have a national shrine here in Winnipeg. I emphasize that to the Latins because I think there's only 2 national martyr shrines in Canada.
Yes, yeah. The first one is in Midland.
Midlands, yeah.
And we're the second one here.
That's right.
And I would say we have the full body of Blessed Vasyl. When we exhumed him in 2002, we discovered as he was buried. Full body mass, all muscles, everything. As he was. So it was like a blessing and say miracle. Rome says wait longer before you declare him incorrupt.
I see.
Although our church called him incorrupt already. Yeah.
Okay. Rome has so many different bureaucratic levels to go through, but I didn't know that his body at this point is seemingly incorrupt.
That's correct.
That's an important thing.
The coffin fell apart. His vestments all fell apart, but his body remained as it was, buried in full. It was even the color of my skin. I was first present at the exhumation.
So I'm not too sure if our people all are aware of this, but in the church, be it Latin or the Byzantine Eastern Church, there's a tradition of certain saints that over a long period of time have remained incorrupt due to their sanctity.
That's correct.
And so it's very interesting to hear these words from you, Father. Well, let me start at the beginning here. Why is this national shrine important?
Well, first of all, it gives us witness that sanctity belongs to ordinary people. It's not just for special few in some monasteries. And Blessed Vasyl was an ordinary man. In fact, when he was declared blessed, our own confreres in Ukraine said, "What? Okay, well, he was an ordinary guy, sometimes rough, and like they didn't see him as extraordinary in his ordinary life. I mean,
right.
he was a great preacher, he was a great man of courage and all that stuff, but they didn't see him as to be singled out. But the church did for its own reasons. But it was so. In other words, it's I think a shrine for us here in Canada, and on top the Martyr shrine on top of that yet, tells us about the value of dying for the truth.
Right. Of
giving up everything to making a stand in life. So I think the shrine is visited by all peoples. We have had many people from all over the world.
So Father John, on that theme then, my question was, what is the witness that Father Vasyl gives to the world? So having said that, why don't you share with us about his life? Because he was a pretty tough cookie.
He was.
And he was a strong witness to the faith under the Soviets and all those things that happened to people that the regime didn't like. So share with us about his life.
I'll give you a little bit.
Thanks.
He comes from a priestly family. In our Eastern Church, we have married priests, as you know. And so his father, grandfather, on both sides were priests. His mother's father was a priest and so on. And so he had a religious upbringing. But, he said he was, as a child, he was a mischievous person. At age 15, he joins what was called the Ukrainian Riflemen, and really was fighting in the end of World War I. Again, like today, fighting for the freedom of Ukraine. There was a chance there of the Ukraine becoming a country. Yeah. And so he was in that. He got arrested. He was told to dig his own grave at the age of 16, 17.
Right.
So that had a profound influence on him, I think. And he was put in prison. That was changed. He was put in prison. And he says in prison he had an experience that he says the best way to serve my country is to become a soldier for Christ. So when he escaped from prison, he went into the seminary. And
this would have been an underground seminary?
Not yet. This is 1920.
Okay.
So the First World War finishes, and he goes into the seminary.
Ukraine was yet to come under the
still coming. And so he became, and he joins the Redemptorists, becomes a Redemptorist missionary, a great missionary with the Orthodox and the Catholics. And it was when the Second World War began, and the Soviets first came through Ukraine in 1939. In 1940, he had a great procession on the Feast of Mother Perpetual Help, and after that, they arrested him.
Okay.
For interrogation, the people went outside the station and protested so strongly that they let him go. But it was this experience of really being hit with the fist and with words. And he says all he remembers is the whole Hail Marys. He was playing the rosary during all this time. And he was let go. The Nazis pushed the Soviets back towards Russia. So his ministry becomes kind of more or less normal. But then in 1944, the Soviets come back, and he actually volunteers to go to the front in Ternopil. Because there was orphans there who couldn't leave, people who couldn't leave. So he goes back there. And in 1945, they really arrested all of our bishops, the Soviets. And 1,700 priests were arrested. He was arrested in August of 1945. Right. And it was very simple. They brought him in, and the arrest is interesting too. He tried to escape, went into the garden, then he took his hand in his pocket, and out came the rosary, and he said, "Why am I running away?" So he went back to the house and said, "I am Velychkovsky." They take him in, give him a paper, say, "Sign this paper, you can join the Russian Orthodox Church, and you can be set free."
Right.
Go home. Of course, for him that meant not just switching, but denying the Catholic faith.
Right.
And so he said, no, never. And they said, you better be careful. We can take you to the wall and shoot you. You can do whatever you want. I will not change my mind. And so he was imprisoned. He was interrogated for about 11 months. And they found the crime was he wrote a little prayer saying, "Save us from the Red Horde," which was the communists. For that he got death row.
I see.
He was on death row for 3 months. While on death row, he was in with hardened prisoners. That's murderers and rapists and thieves who were on death row.
Yeah.
They asked him, "Can you talk to us?" And he began missions. Began to teach them the prayers, how to go to confession in the cell.
Within the prison.
Within the death row cell. And he said he had a 10-day mission for them in that cell, and he had Eucharist by ordinary bread and some wine made from raisins, just a little bit fermented, and so he confessed them all. You can imagine the freedom they felt being hardened prisoners who were probably no church background at all, to have this, perhaps before they are shot.
Mindful of the Beatitudes, to set the prisoners free.
Before
That's a great example.
they are shot. And so
wow.
From there, they let him, they changed his sentence to 10 years of hard labor. So he spent from 45 to 55, mostly in the far north in the Arctic Circle. When the Inuits came down to see our shrine and they heard the story, they adopted him as their patron.
Is that so?
Because he knows what it means to be minus 50.
And this was just recently, was it?
They came in 2005.
2005, okay.
So, there's his icons are all over the place in the far north.
That's fascinating.
Winnipeg, yeah.
Now, he would have been. This is what we commonly understand to be the Gulag Archipelago.
That's right.
Series of work camps. Siberia.
In coal mines and stuff, and
right.
even there, I've been kind of researching and met two prisoners who were with him there, and one of them describes the liturgy, the mass in the mine shafts. He says often we would gather quietly. He would be in his clothes, in his mining clothes, and
right.
took out a spoon,
wow.
and that was a chalice.
Yeah.
And quietly we had the Divine Liturgy. We had two guards on both sides, and he says those were the most profound moments in the prison. Anyhow, he finishes prison, comes back to Ukraine to find that his church is made now illegal. It was made illegal in 1946.
Right.
Unable to practice, no preaching, no liturgies, no marriages, no funerals, nothing. He said, well, if we could have the liturgy in mine shafts and on the bunks of the barracks, we can have it in homes.
Sure.
We can have it without the vestments. We can have it whatever way we can. And so he began an underground church. In fact, the priests call him the father of the underground church, because in 55 he began himself to do that work and to encourage other priests who were coming back to do it. In 59 he was nominated as the bishop. There was no one to ordain him.
Right.
In 1963, our last bishop, who was arrested in 45, who was still living, was being freed from the gulags to go to Vatican II. And on his way, as he's in Moscow, he writes to Lviv, to Father Vasyl Velychkovsky, "Come to Moscow, I have something to pass on to you. Bring an empty luggage." He comes to Moscow in a hotel room. Metropolitan Joseph Slipay ushers us rest out of the room,
right.
Closes the door, stands with his foot against the door, says, "Kneel down." And there
ordained him. Ordained him bishop.
Ordained bishop secretly.
Unbelievable.
In the Moscow hotel room. It was room 624 in Hotel Moskva. We even had that because he had a letter to tell him where to come.
This is an amazing story.
So he ordained him there. And normally, as you're well aware, the passing on of the power is through the crozier. You pass on the crozier to the new bishop. So he took his ordinary walking stick that he had in Siberia and passed it on to him and says, "No, here, now you are in charge."
Right.
No sooner than he finished, they're knocking on the door, says, "It's time to go, Metropolitan." And he took him to Rome. So there he's left now in charge of the church in Ukraine.
In Ukraine, underground.
Underground, very dangerous, always being followed. He ordains a bishop, another bishop, Stranyuk, in his place, so that if he gets arrested, that he would. And Stranyuk became the the bishop from him on until the freedom of the church in 1901. So he was bishop for 6 years, ordained a number of men, organized seminaries, organized the church. His little room, which would be smaller than your room here, was the chancery and the cathedral, and he ordained men there, had liturgies there, and all that kind of stuff. In 69, he was again arrested.
Yes.
This time for writing a book on our Mother of Perpetual Help. That was considered
a very dangerous book.
Yeah, it was very dangerous anti-Soviet literature, and it was dangerous. And he got 3 years of imprisonment for that. This time very different. This time he was sent to a prison in what's right now where the war is right now in Luhansk area.
Oh yeah, we know that word.
Okay,
yeah,
the word Luhansk.
We know
so
that
he was
word.
sent to a psych hospital prison because he was mentally unstable for having to write that kind of book. Okay, so he was considered as a danger to the people. And in that imprisonment, they gave him drugs.
Oh yes.
So they poisoned him.
They experimented on him.
They poisoned him. In fact, he says that one nurse was kind and she knew who he was. And when he was no one around, she would come and put the needle between his arm and the thing into the mattress. Yeah. So that he wouldn't get the dose that he was. So he returned from that 3 years imprisonment. His mind was kind of gone. Heart trouble, nervous system was gone. A broken man. People who saw him said they could barely recognize him.
Right.
He leaves prison, and they send him off to Yugoslavia. Not back home, but to Yugoslavia, where his sister lived. And from there he goes to Rome. This is 1972. And in Rome, our Metropolitan, Maxim Hermaniuk, picks him up and brings him to Canada. So he lives in Canada for the last year of his life. They knew he would die soon after those drugs were given to him, that his health was not going to last long, and he lasted 1 year. He arrived June 15th, 1972, and died June 30th, 1973, in Misericordia Hospital.
Right.
So, and we thought of him as, a holy man, a confessor of the faith, until this Pope John Paul II decided to beatify martyrs, and his name came up because of the shortness between receiving the chemicals and his death. Yeah. His death was caused. He was 70 years old when he died. So death was caused by the tortures he received. So he was considered a martyr.
Right. Yeah. It's sort of like one of the examples that Bishop Fulton Sheen used to talk about. We have wet martyrs and dry martyrs. Yeah. And a wet martyr is one who dies in the Colosseum, you might say, for the faith, and others suffer greatly in their life, and it's martyrdom also. That's a tremendous story. I sort of feel that we're not doing it justice. So many aspects of this, and when you were describing his ordination in that hotel room and other aspects, I kept thinking this would make a great movie that would inspire many young people.
Yeah.
So obviously we're aware today, Father John, of the terrible situation in Ukraine with the invasion, all the suffering there, and having said that, for Ukrainian people today, what's the importance of the witness of Blessed Vasyl?
Well, several things. I mean, first of all, for the people themselves, he was the link between the bishops before the war, and he was if it wasn't for him, he was like in line. He was the link between the church that came out of the underground, and so he was you can say, had he not said yes to that ordination, or didn't go for some reason.
Yes.
So he becomes so he is that physical link. He's been proclaimed in 2014 as the patron of prison ministers by our patriarch in Kiev.
Yes.
With the synod. And so he's so that right away, although it's prison ministers, the army chaplains asked for his relics to go to the front lines, and so they've been sent there. Soon after the war began, his relics came to the front lines.
Isn't that amazing?
So I think that they're taking. He himself was part of 2 world wars. Knows what persecution is. Knows what being in prison is all about. knows what it means to fight, to stand in the way of fire from the First World War. You know, so he I think is a great witness to them of standing firm for the faith to the end. As you hear all the time from the Ukrainians, we will fight until we finish, until we win this whole war. We're not going to. It's our land. So this whole sense of standing for the truth, I think he's a great example for that. And so,
yeah, very inspiring. So I think, you know, we're learning things today that you know, we hear about the Ukrainian war on the news nightly, and here we've just been given the treat of learning about how a saint's relics are also involved in that, inspiring men who are in the midst of battle.
From Winnipeg.
Yeah, from Winnipeg.
Relative from Winnipeg.
From Winnipeg, exactly. From Winnipeg, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, if you visit the shrine on Jefferson Street, there's a wonderful kind of a kit that's put together here. It's a box, it's a kit with all kinds of material about Blessed Vasyl Velychkovsky. And I would certainly encourage people to visit the shrine. This is very important. St. John Paul II used to talk about the 20th century is full of martyrs, and that informs the church and inspires the church. So, Father John, thank you. Is there anything else you want to say?
Well, I would like to just add on that since his transfer into our church, we've had, I would say, over 20,000 pilgrims come through the church for him, of all backgrounds, mostly Roman Catholic, from all across Canada, across Europe, Australia, a lot of Philippines, of course. And there have been, last year we did a booklet, not booklet, but collection, 2016 already, graces and healings and miracles, because the church has its definitions of that, but of real events that take place through his intercession. And there are so many of them, so it's a really place of grace. I would really, as you mentioned, for people to come and to come with your needs and to ask Blessed Vasyl. He's here among us. It's not like somewhere far away in Europe. This is right in Winnipeg. We have the ability to come before a holy martyr. God gives us their presence among us to tell us, I am with you, pray, pray.
And you know, a shrine, a national shrine, I was with university students this morning and I shared with them the importance of knowing the saints, you know. And at a shrine, there are different types of miracles that occur. So it's all according to God's will, right? But there's always the miracle of faith. Always. The miracle of faith giving us strength by God's work within the life of a man, as you said earlier, an ordinary man who people at first didn't realize was so saintly until they saw his life and how he stood up to witness to Jesus Christ. So,
you're welcome.
Father John, thank you so much. This was so very, I'm sure our people really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
God bless you. Thanks for coming in.
And come to the shrine.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Father John Sianchuk. There's many things he mentioned I didn't know before. What a life this Blessed Vasyl lived, and to think that we have the national shrine, his national shrine in the city of Winnipeg. I think we Catholics, whether we're from the Latin Rite or from the Eastern Rite, should be more aware of that and appreciative of that special spiritual presence in our city. So thank you for watching the Friday Report today, and I wish you all well and ask the Lord's blessing for all of you and your families. The Lord be with you, and may God bless you and keep you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.